I'd also like to take the opportunity to welcome John. John's the committee, and John, I've known you from before in the DRD and a few other committees in the past, so it's great to have you here with us at the newly reconvened DERA committee. So you're very welcome, John. I want to also advise members that we'll be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online.
Another day we were broadcast. Only
These are all the officials, they're all here. And
more chairs.
this here. People paper?
Okay, folks, you're very welcome to today as a packed public gallery, and just for the people in the public gallery that you're very welcome here, but you can use your mobile devices provided they are in airplane mode and all devices are muted, and you can connect to the Assembly Wi-Fi, and details of passwords are available on the gallery rules, which can be found on the seats in the public gallery. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any of the meeting. So, Stella, Clerk, are there any apologies?
None.
None. The full house, don't we? Yep, so no further apologies. Item number 2, departmental written briefing on the backlog of SRs for the Environment, Marine and Fisheries Group. I want you to refer members to pages 8 to 47 in your packs. And I also would like to take the opportunity to welcome David Small, Grade 3 of the Head of Environment, Marine and Fisheries Group and Chief Executive of the NA Environment Agency. Very welcome, David.
Thank you. Chair, if you're happy, I'll make a few introductory comments.
Yes,
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to come along to this morning's committee session. I know some of the committee members from previous attendance at that committee several years ago, but I don't know everyone. So my name is David Small. I head up the Environment, Marine and Fisheries Group within the department, one of 5 groups within the department. And if it helps, Chair, I'll say a very brief introduction just to the group and the issues we deal with. So the group includes the Northern Ireland Environment Agency with its regulatory role in relation to water quality, waste, river pollution incidents and those sorts of functions, along with a number of policy divisions covering environmental, marine and fisheries issues. And the kind of issues we deal with will be familiar to committee members, but they include issues like climate change, air quality, water quality, waste, biodiversity, fisheries, both sea fisheries and inland fisheries, and more recently the issue of single-use plastics. And then running alongside all of that, we obviously also have Brexit. In terms of overall size, the group has some 800 staff, including those working specifically on Brexit. And those staff are located across a number of sites, Klondike Building in town, the Donald House, Lisburn, Ballykelly and other smaller locations. So look, I could talk further about the group, but I don't think that's the purpose of today's event. So happy to come back at a future date if necessary to cover the work of the group in more detail with colleagues. But the purpose of today's meeting is around the legislation which we've taken forward over the last number of years. So the committee, I think, have already been provided with details of the various statutory rules which were laid in the absence of the Assembly, and those cover a wide range of issues relating to fisheries, waste management, water, pesticides and other issues. I should say that the legislation was taken forward only where we believed it was necessary. For example, in circumstances where we felt it was needed to meet changes in EU legislation or EU regulations, or to transpose the obligations or requirements of EU directives, or as part of the UK's preparation for Brexit. So I have colleagues with me today sitting in the gallery who will be able to deal with any queries that you have across the various bits of legislation. I'm happy to start that process if that suits you, Chair.
Perfect. Is it members any questions at this juncture? Harry, sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Small. Very welcome. I just wonder, could you maybe tell us what mechanism is DAERA deploying to keep an eye on EU directive regulation changes to ensure that Northern Ireland SRs are compliant or required, particularly in light of the NI protocol within the withdrawal agreement?
Yeah, well, we're at an early stage, I would have to say, in terms of fully understanding all of the implications of the Northern Ireland Protocol and the withdrawal deal. Excuse me. So the Department has established a set of governance that will help us manage our way through all those issues. And that includes the establishment of what we're calling a transition board at departmental level, and then at group level, including my own group, we have our own governance arrangements. So I chair a Brexit board at my group, and we will be examining the implications of the protocol for the issues that I have responsibility for, including issues like waste, fisheries, and so on. So we're at an early stage in that process, but that process is designed to help us understand the requirements of the protocol, what it means for the functions that I'm responsible for, and if necessary, what pieces of legislation or policy change would be required. And that process is running across the other groups within the department, managed by that departmental board.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you.
David, can I ask you, you appreciate that there's a fair backlog of SRs that we have to scrutinise, and can I ask you a question? See, in your opinion, are there any particular statutory rules that you're aware of that may be in the public interest or maybe in any way controversial?
No, I'd have to say nothing has been brought to my attention which would raise concern. But we do recognise that, particularly on the Brexit-related legislation, we were working against very, very difficult timelines, working in difficult circumstances, trying to anticipate the requirements that would fall upon us when we left the EU. And as you know, the exit date for leaving the EU had shifted from March to April to October, and we were constantly working against what we believed was going to be an exit day. So the legislation that pieces of legislation we brought forward were designed to anticipate and address the issues that we felt exit would raise for us. It was a very difficult process, but at this stage I'm not aware of any particular SRs or bits of legislation that we brought forward that I would have concerns about. We believe that what we brought forward was necessary and was in the public interest.
Okay. Can I bring John Blair in there?
Chair, yes, and thank you. Before, as I did the other day with colleagues of those here, can I repeat again that we're grateful for the preparation and hard work that's been done on Brexit preparations, and we know the uncertainty and the multi-scenario outcomes that people had to prepare for at all times, and we're grateful for that and the regular updates we've received in the interim. My questions, Chair, are on two specific SRs, and I'll be guided by you whether you want to take those questions now or if we're taking the SRs individually.
Can we just leave that to later to start dealing individually with them, John? Yeah, thank you. Morris?
Yeah. Sorry, John Dallas.
Oh, sorry, John Dallas. Oh.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'm sure my question will probably be raised at many other committee meetings as well, and it relates to finances and the cost of the statutory regulation, either positive or negative, and also the employment of additional staff. It certainly would be useful for the committee to have some indication as to the financial implications.
Yeah, well, I probably can't give you any particular detail on the actual cost, but I can confirm that as part of the process in preparing for EU exit, there was a very significant volume of legislative change required to correct legislation that would no longer be applicable post-exit. So we did have to put in place additional resource. We brought in teams to bring forward that legislation. I don't have a cost figure today, but that was happening right across the department, and it was absolutely necessary to put the department in a position to prepare itself for EU exit, and that has been the case, as I say, right across the department, where we have identified the need for additional work specifically related to Brexit, which was necessary to help us with those preparations.
Am I allowed to ask a supplementary?
Yeah, cool, yeah.
No, I'm just thinking, given circumstances in the recent past, you'll not be surprised, Mr. Small, that questions are raised about cost. And certainly we wouldn't want to hear in the future of some kind of a spike,
Yeah.
which creates even more problems for an assembly that's obviously under-financed and must be accountable for every single penny that is spent.
Yeah. No, I understand that point totally. Any requests or need that was identified to bring in additional resource to help us manage the Brexit process went through a robust governance process within the department with business case support. So where we felt it was necessary to put in place resource to take forward a piece of legislation, the requirement involved went through an approval process through a departmental project, Brexit programme board, supported by clear identification of need, what was involved, why it was necessary, with then subsequent approvals. So it was a well managed process.
And all that information will be available to this committee to scrutinise.
It would be, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Morris?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming along. Just a wee query. Have any of these SRs introduced new powers to DAERA, such as power of entry, power to seize, and are there costs or likely to be costs associated with that new legislation, if indeed there is any?
I think we would anticipate that with some of the legislation that will be required for Brexit, managing the new environment we'll be working within post-Brexit, where we will be assuming different responsibilities. For example, in terms of managing new policy implications that would formerly have, where we would formerly have been guided by EU directive, EU regulation, we will be determining policy direction with our minister on a whole range of issues. In terms of fisheries, for example, managing access to UK waters is going to be a new responsibility across the whole of the UK. That has not been something that we've had to do in the past. But when we become responsible within the UK for managing access to UK waters, enforcing, controlling all of that, there will be potentially additional enforcement costs, inspection costs, and patrolling costs in terms of what is required there. So yes, some of the legislation most of the legislation that was taken forward in terms of Brexit particularly, was around ensuring that the legislation we had in place would still be applicable post leaving the EU. So for example, where existing legislation referred to approvals of an EU institution, post-exit that would no longer be appropriate, and so there were technical amendments being made to legislation like that. And that tended to be the bulk of most of the legislation. We were trying very hard not to introduce areas of new policy through legislation because we understood that would be inappropriate. In some cases, the legislation went through either Westminster through a statutory instrument process or by SRs through the Assembly. So without going through every single piece of legislation, I can't answer the question fully, but most of the legislation was technical, was correcting things to make the legislation applicable. But there will certainly be areas of new policy responsibilities as we leave the EU where there will be new work for the department. And again, we will be putting those kind of issues through a proper approvals process where we are indicating new work, increased work, where there will be a resource implication. But if there is, that will go through a proper approvals process.
Philip?
Just following on from the Chair's question in relation to controversial or SRs in the public interest, I mean, some of these SRs are operational. I mean, in that sense then, has there been any issues or problems with the ones that are operational?
No, not that I'm aware of. No, and indeed some of the Brexit legislation that we brought forward, if not all of it, was legislation that would become operational on exit day. And we obviously still haven't reached that point, but when we leave the EU, then some of the legislation that we have been bringing forward will become operational. But most of it, as I say, is operational, is addressing technical change where it's needed. I wouldn't anticipate problems as a consequence, but we haven't quite reached that point.
Claire?
Thank you. Thanks very much. Very mindful that we've got a lot
to go through here in the SRs, and I'm new to this committee, so I'm looking forward to working with you as well, and,
Yep.
and nice to meet you. When you're saying that any technical changes that have been made that are Brexit related, so there are technical changes that are currently operational that are specifically related to Brexit, although we haven't left yet. Am I right in that?
Yeah, so in our existing body of legislation, there will be references to EU institutions or seeking approval from a Commission institution. That will no longer be relevant when we're no longer part of the EU, so it would be technical changes like that. Now, as a consequence of the new deal and the new Northern Ireland Protocol, we will probably now have to look again at all of the legislative changes we have brought forward to determine whether they are still relevant or whether the Northern Ireland Protocol and its implications will require further change. So I suspect we will be now starting another process of scrutiny of legislation, including the Brexit legislation we've been working on for the last 12 months, to ensure that any new implications of the protocol are properly addressed. So it is a work in progress.
And am I right? Yeah. Not all the statutory rules here are Brexit related,
No.
am I right? So any changes to ones non-Brexit related, in terms of any consultation or reasoning for those changes, have any of those met with any of the sector or environmental groups' concerns? What's the feedback been?
No, I'm not aware of concerns. So some of the legislation was Brexit related. Other elements were involved legislation being brought forward because there were obligations that we were still bound by as a member of the EU, so EU directive obligations or EU regulations, which required a change to our operational legislation. We still had to bring forward, and we did that using the SR process, but I'm not aware of any concerns. I'm not aware of any controversial legislation that would have been brought forward. It was quite often a minor change to reflect a change at EU level, but not aware of any controversy around that.
So you feel that most of everything in here is really quite technical or minor?
Technical or minor and directly reflecting obligations and changes that we were required to make.
Thank you.
David, sort of on the back of what Claire said there as well, I note that some of the SRs, there has not been a statutory consultation to engage in, statutory obligation to engage in consultation. You know, obviously all of these will have impact on various sectors and the population at large. Why is it that some of them, there's no requirement to consult on that?
Chair, I'm not sure I can answer that without again looking at the individual pieces of legislation. But if it helped, I will do that and report back to the committee.
Fair enough. Members content?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, members, we will be considering the statutory rules in groups, and the first four statutory rules that we will consider are in your packs. The SR 2018-106 sea fishing order, pages 48 to 65. SR 2018-185, the sea fishing miscellaneous amendments and revocation order 2018, that's 66 to 74. SR 2019-061, the sea fish licensing order, pages 75 to 83, and SR 2019-65, the sea fishing licensing and noticing amendment regulations, Northern Ireland 2019, pages 84 to 92. The official present in the public gallery is Patrick Smith, right? And Patrick will be able to answer some of the questions you have. I'll just give you a few minutes till I'm conscious that I haven't had sight of this terribly long. We'll give you a few minutes just to take a look over it, and then we can make questions, open up questions to Patrick. Are members content to start asking questions, or do you want a bit more time?
It's good to have more time.
Okay, no problem.
I'm content if others are.
Okay, members, if you are content, we can begin the question of the official Patrick here with us today. Suppose, first of all, can I ask the question, Patrick, in relation to these SRs? What is the situation in other regions, such as, say, Scotland and Wales? You know, how has that been handled in other? Oh, sorry, SR 2019-65, the sea fishing licensing notices amendment regulations 2019.
Yeah, that particular SR.
And the 61 as well, sorry.
Yeah, one was a consequence of.
Yeah.
So the SR 2019 number 61 was part of the department's no deal planning, and what it was to provide for was the licensing of foreign fishing vessels in UK waters in a no deal scenario once the UK left the EU. Similar SIs were introduced in England, Scotland and Wales in March of 2019, whenever just prior to the former EU exit date. So equivalent SRs or SIs have been made in other parts.
Philip,
Yeah.
you're down for a question there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
I'm conscious that we didn't get our pack until late yesterday evening, and there's an awful lot of information here. So, I have some questions that hopefully make sense. So, I'm just going to fire them through. The Fisheries Bill hasn't been introduced yet. So, how likely are these provisions to be needed? And the other things. I've kind of a concern about the impact on island-wide fishing. The Good Friday Agreement, for example, set up the Locks Agency. There's a kind of an interdependence between fishing north and south. There's phrases in these SRs that talk about foreign fishing vessels. I'd like to tease out what that actually means for fishing vessels from the south. Because they would dock in northern ports. And also tease out what it means for labour in terms of EU citizens that are very critical to our fishing industries. Also EU trade. Fishing. Hopefully I'm right when I'm saying that EU trade makes up 94% of the North's fishing export, and 50% of that's to the south. So I'm just not clear, and it doesn't seem to be clear to me that or it seems to me that this is in some way excluding southern fishing vessels from docking and fishing in northern waters, and I just want to know the impact on that.
If I answer the first question, David, just in terms of how relevant they are, the coming into operation date was exit day, or is exit day. So these SRs, in terms of the licensing and the consequential one, which looks at the licenses and notices, will be revisited again in the context of the Fisheries Bill, which includes powers to license foreign vessels. So in essence, they may be revoked as a consequence of what happens in the Fisheries Bill and the powers that are therein to license foreign vessels. So they may not. They were simply there as a no-deal planning, so that if we exited, there was a provision to license foreign vessels in UK waters on exit day, and that's that they're framed.
The Fisheries Bill will revisit.
Yes, the Fisheries Bill includes the powers.
I think the reason we had to take forward these bits of legislation was because originally they were planned to be addressed through the Fisheries Bill, which then fell, and we were left in a situation with no cover around the points Patrick has described, and therefore the need to do this through SRs. But as Patrick says, the Fisheries Bill is hopefully going to be introduced to Parliament again, and these issues will then be revisited. So the continued need for this kind of provision, I suppose, will be subject to where the Fisheries Bill takes us.
Yeah, Bob?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we get an answer to the question about the interconnectedness and, the impact on, our ports in the north where Southern Ireland boats would dock, and the whole aspect of kind of all Ireland fishing and interconnectedness. And just in terms of that, I mean, just given the nature, and as I say, we only got this last night. I mean, to me, this would, in my view, seem a bit controversial. Going back to the fact that you said there was nothing controversial. I mean, this, in my view, seems controversial. And if you could answer, because somebody else had previously asked you a question about consultation. So if you had the information about why there was no specific requirement for consultation on particularly the SR 61 and 65s as well.
Well, the SR was simply to prohibit foreign vessels to fish in the waters unless they were licensed by the devolved administrations to do so. But your second point in terms of the future access will be subject to the Fisheries Agreement, which is hopes to be ratified by July of 2020, and that will address the access arrangements between the UK and the EU and vice versa. So those issues in terms of vessels from the Republic of Ireland in our waters will be addressed as part of that agreement.
And that process is beginning. So there will be a pretty intensive round of negotiations in terms of future fisheries agreement between UK and EU. That would include Ireland in terms of how access to both from UK into European waters and European into UK waters will be managed, and that will be done through the work around that fisheries agreement negotiation, which is just starting.
I'm going to move John Blair. People can get back in again because I know there's a lot of questions. People want to ask questions here. John.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I came here with a limited knowledge of inland fisheries, and David and some others will be aware of that, and less knowledge, it might be argued, of sea fisheries. But I've received some briefings prior to the restoration of the Assembly, and I think my first question might have been answered, at least in part, and perhaps more than that, in relation to the agreements coming forward. But what I gleaned from what I'd heard before was, first of all, that there was no defined boundary at this stage in the REC when the Fisheries Bill was going between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, when the original Fisheries Bill was going through Westminster. And secondly, at that stage, they said that the quotas would be set by the devolved assemblies. I'm wondering, is that still the case in relation to quotas, or have regulations around that changed, or are they likely to change? And also, if the border stroke boundary in the sea issue has been resolved.
In terms of quotas, that would be something that the Fisheries Bill team will be taking forward. I mean, this particular SR was about the access arrangements and the no deal, so I can't answer that question just at the minute, John. And equally the boundary, I know there is an issue maybe with the defining the boundary, but that's something that once we get sight of the Fisheries Bill, which hasn't been introduced yet, that we will have to look at, or certainly the Fisheries Bill within DERA we'll have to look at. But we haven't had sight of the bill hasn't been introduced yet.
Okay.
And I think, John, the issue of quotas is also going to be tied up into that wider negotiation around fisheries, future fisheries agreement, because there's an issue around the fisheries agreement between UK and EU, as you know, as part of that wider process, there are also going to have to be negotiations and discussions around quota share within UK between the four fisheries administrations. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, you know, around all of that. And the Minister's made it clear that we should be seeking to optimise the opportunities and benefits as far as we can for the Northern Ireland fisheries industry. That will hopefully come out of Brexit. But a lot of work ahead of us in the context of that wider negotiation.
Okay,
No supplementary, that's fine.
Rosemary.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Can I just clarify something in relation to the EU exit situation? Does that mean that our Northern Ireland boats will no longer be able to fish in non-UK waters? And could you tell me then what impact that could have on the Northern Ireland fishing industry?
Okay.
Again, that will be subject to the fisheries negotiation and any subsequent agreement, and that will be access between UK vessels and into the EU waters, and vice versa will be part of that negotiation, and that will, the plan is for that to be ratified by July of 2020.
I think, as I say, our aim will be to increase the opportunities for the Northern Ireland fishing fleet rather than allow a situation to develop where it's worse. You know, that is definitely not the intention, and the Minister has made that clear that, you know, we will, and certainly that's what the fishing industry want us to do. We will be seeking to optimise the fishing opportunities for the Northern Ireland fleet.
Okay. Harry?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Patrick. 2018-106 was the number, and it's illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. Just wondering if you could tell me, has there been any further consultation or, more important, review to assess if the regulation is working effectively for the industry? Thank you.
Chair, just that particular regulation was introduced to implement an EC regulation, and its main effect was to allow the department to delegate a responsibility to local councils, Belfast Council in particular, which is responsible for the port and the checking of catch certificates for imported fish products. So, in terms of numbers, it's about 20 per annum, and we're not getting any issues back from any Belfast Council insofar as its operation. So, the answer to that is no issues.
Okay, you're satisfied. Okay, thank you.
I think it's part of a wider issue around illegal fishing, you know, and the more, I think the more effective our regulations are, the better. But it is about managing sustainability of fish stocks and managing illegal fishing.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, you're looking for another question?
I was just going to ask, when you were talking about where you hope to get to and where we're at now, and the kind of gap between it. So if this SR was implemented, you know, it would be restrictive in terms of what's happening. There would be a lot of changes in terms of what's currently happening.
There would be an introduction of licensing.
And there's no guarantee we will get to the points that you're hoping to get to, if you know what I mean. So if this SR was implemented now, it would be quite restrictive on fishing as it currently happens.
I think it would introduce a licensing regime,
exactly,
because the whole of the UK will need to somehow control access of other vessels into UK waters, and that's the basic requirement. This is trying to
and similarly, our vessels would have been required to be licensed to fish in EU waters if there had been an exit before now.
But I suppose the point that Patrick has already made is that this will all need to be looked at again now within the context of the Fisheries Bill. So the operational date for this SR was exit day?
Yeah, exit day as defined in the EU Withdrawal Act was originally the end of March 2019. It was subsequently amended to April and then again to October, and now it's the end of the implementation period. So it comes into operation on exit day. So
which has been defined,
December 2020, and the end of
this
implementation.
won't become
so it's not operational yet, and it can be revoked if, notwithstanding the fact that the Fisheries Bill will be progressing.
Yeah, but I do think we need to track where the Fisheries Bill takes us and what implications that would have then for this piece of legislation before it becomes operational.
I'm maybe overhyping this, but I mean, I'm shocked that there's been no consultation with the fishing industry on something that seems to me to be as important as this. And you didn't answer my question in relation to this. You know, why is that the case, that there's been no need for consultation?
Well, I think there probably was consultation at a UK level whenever, because there was powers to license in the original Fisheries Bill. I need to take that away just to check the actual
So I think
what
we
consultation did take place.
need to clarify that point.
The Fisheries Bill previously had powers to do so, and there would have been consultation as part of that. But to implement this particular SR, we needed to get this in by exit day back in March of 2019, and it was replicating what had happened in England, Scotland and Wales.
But nevertheless, Chair, I'm not sure we've fully addressed the consultation point, so we will write to the committee with further clarification and explanation of that.
Okay, Chair. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose my question's really following on from that as well. I mean, I can see that there's no duty for you to, under a lot of these changes, to go to public consultation on that. And I'm just wondering, within this period, and I know that the Brexit date has been movable on several occasions, and I completely understand it, but given the fact that there is no real defined sea border, and we've got those movable parameters within 6 miles, and also that we had no executive and we had no assembly within all that time, that the dates were movable, do you not feel that it would have been good practice to maybe have even gone to the sector to have those conversations, while there's maybe no duty on you to go to full consultation, just under good practice, to try and garner consensus or tease out some issues, or even get people on board and have that sort of conversation with them? Or was this done, and I understand that you're doing it within the UK framework, but obviously we're not the same as Scotland, England and Wales here either.
Okay, so I understand the point and the question being put to us. As I say, we've already given a commitment to write to the committee on this, and I'd like to do that so that we can address the question properly. You're asking a valid question around consultation, the requirements for consultation, and in this particular circumstance, whether it was deemed necessary or not. I'm not saying that there was no engagement at this, because I'm not actually sure. Yeah. But I think if you're content, we'll write and we'll address both issues that have been put to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Morris?
Thank you, Chair. David, Patrick, a wee question about the illegal fishing. There was consultation conducted in the industry, and that has been addressed from 2010, but under the new situation we find ourselves in, do you expect more illegal fishing? And what have you done to consider the potential of an increase in illegal fishing, and how are you going to combat that in the future? Well, what is the threat to, potential threat to fish stocks?
Okay, so that has been a part and parcel of the Brexit preparations right across the UK, and there is a dedicated work stream which deals with control and enforcement, addressing the very point you're raising, which I think Northern Ireland leads and chairs. So we have been very close to that. But I suppose the first point is, do we expect there to be an increase in terms of illegal fishing or illegal access to UK waters? At a UK level, assessments are being made around whether we do expect that to happen. I think there's some concern that it's likely. But I suppose until we actually find ourselves in the situation where we have left the EU and we've introduced new licensing arrangements, we don't know for sure, but there is, I think, some expectation that is a possibility. And so across the UK, that work stream is looking at what additional enforcement, patrol, inspection requirements there might be. And that is work in progress, but it's something we are aware of as a potential risk, and work is being done to consider what additional level of inspection, enforcement, patrol would be necessary. So it is work we're looking at, but it is an assessment of the extent to which we believe it will actually happen, and we need to just weigh all of that up in terms of what conclusions we reach at UK level and what additional resource we would want to put into that. But it's something we're very aware of.
Thank you. Thank you,
Marsh. John?
Chairperson, sorry for being confused. Just trying to get my head around this whole thing. If I was in charge of a fishery protection vessel sailing down Carlingford Lough, how would I define a foreign vessel that might be fishing illegally?
Yeah. I don't know if you can pick that up, Paddy. We don't have our enforcement people with us today, but vessels are required to, I think, fly a flag, which will indicate, you know, the nature of the vessel and where it's from. Now they might choose not to do that, and that would then fall back to our inspection teams, who will be pretty familiar with the local vessels. They will know the local fleet. There would be a bit of local intelligence that would come to play in terms of being able to spot a vessel that looks unusual or that you wouldn't expect to be there. But you know, it's something that our inspection and enforcement teams, you know, do on a day-to-day basis, and they are more expertise at it than I am. But they will have local intelligence, and they'll have systems that would enable them to do that. But it will be part and parcel of.
Thanks very much for that, David. Obviously, the enforcement team only carry out the instructions they're given.
Yeah.
Now, we'll not go down the road of flags any further.
Yeah.
We'll stop at that. But, you know, if there's a fishing vessel and it's from Kilkeel, that's dead simple. We understand where it comes from. But let's say it's from Howth. Would that be a foreign vessel?
Well,
if it's flying the flag of the country that
if it's a non-UK vessel, not registered UK,
yeah,
then it would be classed a foreign vessel.
So, if there was a fishing vessel from Howth with a tricolour on it, for example, it's a foreign vessel.
yes,
Yeah. Unless as part of the wider UK
That's what I'm trying to get.
fisheries agreement, some arrangement is reached, but that takes us back into that wider UK negotiation, which is just starting.
yeah, it ought to fly the flag of the port or the nation of the port that it's registered.
Stop with that.
Yeah, I know.
William, you're looking at there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. As I see it, am I right or wrong in saying that these SLRs are in the main probably will be temporary, because when final negotiations is done, will be changes to those probably, right?
Yeah, I think these were deemed necessary to
Yeah.
deal with a no-deal situation where we were going to find ourselves out of the EU, and we needed to make sure that our existing legislation was still operational.
So in effect, when final negotiations are completed, everyone should level itself out at that stage.
I think we will need to review all of the
Yeah.
legislation that we have in place in the context of the wider fisheries agreement negotiations and in the context of what the fisheries bill provides. And so we may need to look at all of this
Yeah,
again.
they'll probably be
Fully
revoked.
straightforward.
But this was putting in place arrangements that we felt were necessary to deal with the no-deal exit possibility.
Okay.
Thanks.
I suppose, Patrick, you mentioned earlier that there's a possibility of revoking some of these SRs. How likely is that to happen? You know, or what timescale might there be with that?
Well, the fisheries bill, the latest word from DEFRA is that the UK fisheries bill will be introduced next week before the UK leaves the EU. I had asked the question, and the soundings are that it will be introduced or enacted by October 2020. So we will then have the detail or the powers, notwithstanding the fact that it's to go through all the various stages in Westminster and subject to amendment. But there's powers likely to be in that bill which will provide for the licensing of foreign vessels. So the powers are in that bill, in that act, then we can use that power, then we will make legislation under that act to license for foreign vessels, and those two SR 2019-61 and 65 could be revoked. Because they're, in effect, they're coming into operation on exit day.
And what, Patrick, would be the implication now, for example, if these were annulled? What would be the implication for the industry and indeed for the department?
I don't think there would be
I
any.
suppose our concern is that it would remove the piece of legislation we put in place that will give us the necessary protection and authority if it's needed at the time. Now, I suppose if it was annulled at the moment, we would lose that assurance and certainty that we will have the necessary legislative framework in place. It might be that the fisheries bill will provide it for us again, but I would be worried and cautious just about removing the assurance this gives us at this point in time. But I do recognise the need that we need to continue to look at the requirement for these pieces of legislation in the wider context that we have discussed, and particularly the fisheries bill. the framework of legislation that gives us.
Chair, I mean, I don't know if we've got to the end of the conversation. I mean, I was just going to say that, I mean, there's a number of questions and queries that I would certainly like further teased out, if possible. I mean, I don't think, particularly with the SR 61 and 65, that, I mean, I certainly couldn't be in a position to agree. I mean, you know, just following on, I mean, it's been made by a couple of people, I mean, this indication of southern fishing vessels being somehow deemed foreign, for example, is completely unsatisfactory. So, I mean, I would suggest that we, perhaps in the aftermath of this, write to the officials and tease out with some further questions and get a written response to some of the things that have been raised today and some of the things that we might want to put in writing as well.
Are you proposing deferral of the? Yeah. Of any decision on this one?
Yeah, particularly the two, 61 and 65.
We've already committed Chair to write on the consultation point. If it helped, we can include in that response greater clarification of the provisions as they would apply in terms of ROI vessels and whether they would be classed as foreign vessels, if that's helpful. Yeah. And at that point, if the committee felt more information was needed, we can certainly come back and provide that.
And could you maybe clarify as well the impact of annulment as well?
Yeah.
With the department and sector reports.
So is that impact at the moment of the SR?
If the SR was annulled.
If it was annulled, yeah.
Chair, and we're clear through you. I hope that we'll get some kind of indication of the engagement that's taken place. I was down with the representatives of the Kilkeel Fisheries Fleet end of August time with the chair of the European Fisheries Committee. There were high levels of concern at that time. I'm guessing haven't dissipated. And I'm keen to know if they and other groups on that county down coast have been consulted regularly or
that's very important.
Yeah, so we'll pick that up in the context of consultation, the level of engagement that has taken place.
Great.
And we've certainly been engaging with the industry on a whole range of Brexit-related issues rather than just this SR, but in the round with the industry, we know there has been concerns around impact on trade. So there have been discussions and a good level of engagement, but certainly happy to cover that point as well.
Okay. Okay, members, if you're, members content then that the, okay, well, Patrick and David, thank you very much for your briefing and answering the questions.
Sure, if you're content, I'll leave the meeting now because that's other
Yeah, I think we can agree to that. Or not, no, sorry, agree to defer those until further information.
Okay, members, SR 2019-61, the Sea Fish Licensing Order, Northern 2019, and SR 2019-65, the Sea Fishing Licensing Notice Amendment Regulations 2019. These are the two we're speaking about most recently there, and we've committee are content to get that deferred. Yeah. Okay. So those are deferred. The other two regulations here is the SR 2018-106, the Sea Fishing Illegal, Unreported, Unregulated Fishing Order, Northern Ireland 2018. I'm going to put the question that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2018-106, the Sea Fishing Illegal, Unreported and Unregulated Fishing Order, Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to the Examiner of Statutory report has no objection to the rule. Agreed?
Agreed, yeah.
And SR 2018, the Sea Fishing Miscellaneous Amendments and Revocation Order, Northern Ireland 2018. The question that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2018-185, the Sea Fishing Miscellaneous Amendments and Revocation Order, Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to the Examiner of Statutory report has no objection to the rule. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, folks, the next four SRs are to be considered are the SR 2017-81, the Water Environment Regulation 2017, page 93 to 31 in your pack. The SR 2017-085, the Water Resources Regulations 2017. That's page 132 to 156 in your pack. SR 2017-2011, the Private Water Supplies Regulations, Northern Ireland 2017, pages 157 to 190. And the SR 2017-2012, the Water Supply Water Quality Regulations, Northern Ireland 2017, pages 191 to 244. And Eamon Campbell is in the public gallery to take questions on this, but perhaps we'll give you a few minutes to consider them before Eamon, or you ask your questions of Eamon. Okay, members, sorry to disrupt your consideration, but I want to, if possible, we can move on here. So, Eamon, you're very, very welcome to give you a briefing here on these SRs. So,
thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you want me to say a few words just about the SRs themselves in sort of general terms before members start asking questions? Or?
Oh, sorry. You want to take questions on?
Just questions.
Questions?
Sorry, just questions?
Just questions, yeah.
Okay.
Rosemary?
Yeah, mine's in relation to SR 2017-085 in relation to the Water Resources Regulation. Can you tell me what impact this may have on farmers who may use significant amounts of water, for example, from their own supply, such as a borehole well, and the use of it on a plate cooler? You know, they're using large amounts of water. And what would be the impact?
Okay. I suppose the first thing to say is that these are regulations that revoked and replaced previous regulations, so the differences in terms of the operational requirements on farms haven't changed that dramatically. But the regulations require environmental impact assessment to be carried out on particular volumes of water abstraction. So this is to safeguard the environment and provide an assessment of the impact of that abstraction.
So therefore that will have an impact on some of these larger dairy herds, these larger farms that are using water for cooling?
Well, it possibly could, but our experience in making the regs when we carried out our consultation was that we didn't find any indications that there were any significant different impacts to what there had been previously.
Mm-hmm. And again, I know at your consultation there were very few, very small number of responses again.
Yes, I think that's a fairly common theme with our water regulations, or at least these four in particular.
Thank you. Harry, and then Claire. Harry.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Very welcome. Thank you, Chair. At 2017-211, a question on private water supplies regulation. I'm just wondering, I mean, there's only been 4 responses back on the consultation of this. I'm wondering if the changes that you're proposing, have they already taken place, or are there something you're thinking about? And are there any downfalls if this didn't happen? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, again, this is those regulations were updating the previous set of regulations in the light of updates to the the Drinking Water Directive in this case. Yes, there was a small number of responses, but again, in terms of impact, I think we assessed it as having very little impact, certainly in terms of differentials in costs or benefits, and the primary purpose is obviously the safeguarding of human health and the provision of safe water supplies.
No, I'm happy enough with it then if it makes the water safer. That's okay. Thank you.
Claire?
Thank you, Chair. We'll come back. Hi. Great. Thanks a million for being here. Go back to that consultation. I see that you got really good engagement by the looks of the numbers of people coming to attend, but yet low consultation responses. And you said there in response to Rosemary's question that that's pretty standard.
Well, it is in my experience. I mean, I've been in this post now 7 years,
Okay.
and you know, we don't get, just the fact of the matter is we don't get inundated with consultation responses. I mean, unless it's something that captures the public imagination, and I suppose drinking water has that potential.
Okay.
Because it affects everybody, and everybody has a vested interest in safe supplies, obviously, you know.
Is there, what type of consultation process do you go through then? Is there something maybe in terms of barriers for people being able to respond, or do you just generally think that people don't respond because...
Well, we just go through our standard consultation process.
Okay. Because don't see 200 people engaging in, you know, outreach or info sessions, and then to see 4 official responses coming in.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is to that, quite
Okay.
honestly. You know, I suppose we can't force people to make formal responses, and I suppose it does take time and effort, and people have busy lives, I guess, and, you know, they just don't respond in that way. But, I mean, at least we had the other responses and the other opportunities to hear views.
Have you ever considered changing the consultation process?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Morris?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks very much for coming to answer questions. One that springs to mind to me is the methodology used for the risk-based approach. You've already alluded to the fact that there's per consultation responses, you've only had 2. Is that satisfactory response, and are there any costs attached to it for the improvement of drinking water?
When we did our impact assessment before we made the regulations, we determined that there was no additional significant costs, so no change there. Sorry, I've forgotten the start of your question.
About the risk-based approach that you adopted,
Yeah.
satisfactory, considering you've only had 2 respondents?
Well, the risk-based approach is something that the drinking water inspectors would use in terms of private water supplies, and it's something that the water undertaker, NI Water, would be required to do through the regulations to ensure that they carry out regular risk analysis, again, in order to determine that the water is safe and drinkable.
Okay. Thank you,
Claire? Claire?
Just we follow up again, back on that one. Just given the good engagement, the implementation of these, any feedback from the sector or concerned organisations or groups in terms of impact?
No significant feedback that I can recall now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Grant? Sorry, it's good.
Yeah, and mine's just to follow up on my previous question too. Have you any idea how many projects there are in Northern Ireland that would be result in extracting 200 metres water per day?
Sorry, I would need to write back to you on that. If the committee wants a response to that, certainly can come back to you, but I don't have the figures to hand.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay. We have John, yeah.
Maybe the question's outside the parameters, and if it is, just tell me. There are still a considerable number of households that don't have a choice in connecting to mains water. Has any thought been given to the implications for them should the rising levels of nitrate and ammonia and so on lead to a situation where, in fact, no drinking water from natural resources is reliable?
I'm not sure I can answer that on the basis of the regulations that we're talking about this morning. I suppose perhaps the right to water, which has gathered some attention in recent years, is still something that officials would be considering. Which is
I think that's very welcome, and I do accept the questions outside your current remit. But there is a situation developing where people who, by choice, wish to have their water supply taken from natural resources won't have that choice if we don't do something about the rising levels of pollution occurring all over the place.
I suppose I would just say that the agency and the department are particularly concerned about those kind of pollution issues, and we're constantly trying to improve the measures that we take and we put in place to address those kind of issues. We actually have a consultation out at the minute on the significant water management issues for the next set of river basin management plans.
Chairperson, that's very useful. I'm glad to have it in the record.
John. And William.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for answering some of our questions. In relation to bore wells and the sea, the extraction has to be up to 200 cubic metres of water. 200 cubic metres of water is a massive amount. We're very, very few people drawn down that amount in Northern Ireland. We're a farm. There's no way you draw down 20 for that in the day, no matter how much you're using. Seems a massive amount of water, really.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I would say. Massive amount of water.
Okay. Okay. If members are content, I'm going to put the questions in relation to these 4 SRs. The SR 2017-81, that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs considered SR 27-81, the Water Environment Water Framework Directive Regulations, Northern Ireland 2017, and subject to the examiner's statutory report, has no objection to the rule. Right.
Great.
The next one, the 2017-085, that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 27-085, Water Resources Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2017, and subject to the examiner of statutory rules, has no objection to the rule.
Great.
SR 2017, 2011, that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2017-2011, Private Water Supplies Regulations, Northern Ireland 2017, and subject to examiner statutory rules, has no objection to the rule. Great. SR 27-12, the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 27-12, the Water Supply Water Quality Regulations, Northern Ireland 2017, and subject to the examiner statutory rules report, has no objection to the rule. Okay. Thank you, Eamon, or perhaps Eamon's through the answer to this one, is that right?
No, Brian Irvine.
Right. Okay, that's right. The next SR to be considered is SR 2017-198, the Environmental Impact Assessment Agriculture Amendment Number 2 Regulations, Northern Ireland 2017. On page 245 to 269 your pack, the official present is Brian. You're very welcome, Brian. And Brian can answer any questions the members may have, and I'll give the members a few minutes to read the information before I come to ask for members get any questions.
Actually, just because everybody isn't coming, Brian is going to cover. And it was to put it, there's a couple of things, yeah.
Okay, so that's,
So,
okay, and because Tommy's not here?
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, and because Tommy's not here, Brian will also cover SR 27222, the seed marketing regulations, 2017, page 270 to 275 in your pack, and also the SR 2018-188, the pesticides, genetically modified organisms and fertilizers, miscellaneous amendments regulation, Northern Ireland 2018, 276 to 288 in your packs. Sorry, I should say as well, whenever you're here, Brian will also cover 2019-81, the Nutrient Action Programme regulations, and he'll also cover 2019-183, the Nutrient Action Programme Amendment Regulations 2019. Okay, members, you've had a few moments to absorb that information. Questions now to Brian and the John Blair. You have indicated
Chair, thank you, and thank you, Brian, for presenting here. Can I ask you about one of the things that was glaringly obvious to me here was the omission of the Northern Ireland Biodiversity Group and World Wildlife Fund Northern Ireland from the list of consultees. What were the reasons for that?
I can't say why. I suppose we sent out a consultation to our list there, but we would have published the consultation on the website. Can't say why in particular those were omitted. We would have followed the previous list of consultees when we brought in the original regulations.
I'm guessing, Chair, that this means that people who were previously on the list of consultees are no longer on the list of consultees, and someone has decided that be the case?
No, sorry, I'm saying it the other way, that we followed the list of consultees that we would have used before with the original regulations, and they wouldn't have been on it. We certainly wouldn't have excluded anybody. We would intend to bring in as many people.
Although this reads that people are being removed through you, Chair, from the list, no? Schedule 5 omit the Department of Environment and all of the executive agencies separately. Northern Ireland Biodiversity Group, and again separately the World Wildlife Fund Northern Ireland.
I would have to come back to the committee on that to explain that why. I mean, I'm quite sure with good reason to do that.
Yeah, and Chair, if that information was coming back, obviously why the decision was taken, we've clarified that, but also who would be responsible for such decisions.
Yeah.
I would imagine it was a nationalisation of the list, and they may have been covered in through an umbrella organisation. We would certainly have
just for information, so we know how these
would have had no intention to exclude.
Okay, Harry.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Brad. It's on the same one, Brian, 2017-198, and you just claimed that costs will be reduced because of changes. Have you any evidence of this, and could you tell us how much roughly maybe you've saved since September 2017?
Well, it would depend on the number. We haven't done an actual calculation depending on the number of applications, but I would say the number of applications for these assessments is small because of the threshold area. There's only a limited number of projects that these regulations apply to.
Okay, thank you.
Harry. William, could I say, sorry, just before we come to the next speaker, as given that we're dealing with a fair number of SRs, could you just be specific as to which SR that you're referring to, William?
Okay, thank you, Brian. And in relation to SR 2019-081, Youth in Action Programme, are there any changes to the regulation in relation to that? Any new changes in this?
Yes. There are a range of changes to the Nutrients Action Programme regulations, and for the committee in general, I would say probably of all the regulations I'm speaking on today, this is the most significant regulation of all, because most of the other regulations here are technical changes as a result of Brexit. Minor technical fixes, implementing EU directives, but the Nutrients Action Programme is a major piece of legislation, and it is an update of the existing Nitrates Action Programme that has been in since 2007. The purpose is to reduce and prevent nutrient pollution from agricultural sources impacting on the water environment, and it applies to all farmers in Northern Ireland, and it's a major piece of environmental legislation to protect water, but also it places significant requirements on farmers. The action programme under the directive it exists for a 4-year period, and it must be reviewed and revised every 4 years. So we go through that process of review and consult on proposed changes, and that's the process we went through last year. And as a result of that, we proposed changes to the regulations, consulted on it, adjusted those proposals, and then that led us to the current Nutrients Action Programme. The context as well is that
the action programme, the directive requires your action programme to be agreed with the European Commission. So there's a detailed process with DG Environment in Brussels. And the other aspect is the action programme sets a limit on the amount of livestock manure that can be applied to land of 170 kilograms per year per hectare. There's what's called a derogation, which under certain conditions allows farmers to farm at a higher limit, up to 250 kg of nitrogen per hectare per year. And that derogation must be applied for and approved by the European Commission and the European EU Nitrates Committee in Brussels. And that's a lengthy process over a period of a year. And the derogation application is then subject to a vote at that committee in order to get that. And then that is a formal legal decision that then enables us through the amending regulations to implement that derogation, and that allows certain farms to apply for derogation and operate under it, subject to the conditions of the derogation. Derogation is particularly important for a significant number of dairy farms. There's 470 farms operating in the derogation, and without that, they couldn't operate at the level or the way they're doing. They would either have to export manure to other farms, or they would have to reduce stock numbers or whatever. So it's important, and it's always been departmental policy to apply for and secure the renewal of the derogation, because it helps actually sustainable farming. It helps farmers maximise grass-based production rather than rely more on concentrated feeds and imported feeds to produce milk. So the two are in tandem, that process, and you won't, a member state will not get approval for a derogation without an agreed action programme and the whole detailed process of scrutiny through the Brussels procedure. So parallel with that review, of course, if we come home away from Brussels, we would have detailed engagement with the farming organisations and environmental stakeholders, and that's always been the process in any review, and this was our third review leading to our fourth action programme, and the action programme covers the period 2019 to 2022. In this consultation, we produced a stakeholder engagement document, and we had a major stakeholder event at Athby Hillsborough, and presented a lot of detail on science and so on to engage closely with the stakeholders. And as well, we would have had bilateral meetings on request with stakeholders. So in terms of, I'm sorry, yes, we've made a number of changes to the action programme, and the changes, we adjusted those changes as a result of the responses to the consultation.
Supplementary? Do you want to supplement?
Just a quick supplementary. We propose to leave the EU now at the end of the month. Will that change that situation, or will we still get a derogation?
Yes, that was I would explain, an important dynamic in this, and we were due to leave the EU on the 31st of March last year, and we secured approval for the derogation on the 28th of March or whatever at an Nitrates Committee meeting. I think we felt, and I say we, that was a department, but collectively the industry felt it was very important to get approval of the derogation and get that secured, so that there was certainty for farmers for 4 years going forward. And particularly when you look at parity, cross-border trade and things like that, without knowing what way Brexit was going to work or anything else, it's important to demonstrate that we would be on a level playing field, particularly with other competitors in the EU, but as well with the Republic of Ireland. And the case in the Republic of Ireland is they have an approved derogation for a 4-year period. Now their 4-year period starts early, but so it was, and I think it's fair to say we means collectively it was important to have secure the derogation.
Okay. Thank you. Rosemary?
Yeah, just to follow on from William's question, how long does it take farmers to get this derogation, to
Yes, it's an annual application process.
So it's
yes.
It has to be done annually?
Has to be, yes. And all the conditions of the derogation are actually set in a formal EU decision, so it's EU law and sets those conditions. And farmers must apply daily to Northern Ireland Environment Agency to renew the derogation.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. And I want to take a look then at the impact, the environmental impact assessment amendment here. This is regulation that I assume is causing major problems now with the setting up of new hen houses, etc., etc., and the new perhaps dairy units that farmers are building are trying to expand towards.
I could clarify. It's not. No, this is
not.
This deals entirely with basically changing land use or intensifying agricultural land from semi-natural land. It's not to do with livestock production or anything. It's if you wanted to clear an area that was maybe semi-natural grassland, wasn't farmed intensively, and change that into intensive pasture and things. So it's not. It's entirely different. It's about cultivating land and changing land use.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Philip?
William supplementary teased out the answer to the question I was going to ask.
Yeah, and John?
Chairperson, I have to admit, I was going down the same road as Rosemary, but I'll still seize the opportunity to acknowledge the work that the department has done. And maybe at some time can be explained why environmental impact assessments are drawn up and then not applied, particularly through planning regulations and so on. But being specific to what you've just said, given that the whole emphasis on farming is now going to move to the environment rather than the production of food and so on, what implication is that for regulation?
Well, it's all about ensuring that any negative impacts of farming are minimised or mitigated, but as well, that I suppose in terms of policy too, you want to support things that are good for the environment and all the beneficial things that come from certain farming practices. I mean, an example is about moving to splitting slurry by low emission methods and things. That reduces the environmental impact, but also increases production efficiency. Get more value out of the manure. So you have a double benefit there in terms of you reduce environmental impact, but you also get more production and need to use less chemical fertilizer. So those are things which I build in, and there's an element of that in phasing in the nutrients action programme.
Yeah, I think that's a useful contribution. But it still doesn't answer the question why we have the good legislation and then it's not applied when farmers make planning applications for change of use and so on. No, it's not. I mean, the environmental impact assessment very often is not called for. There's a whole list of those now queued up through our district councils. The Habitat Directive is not asked about. The Birds Directive is not asked about. Surely there is a breakdown between the department and the planning, which is now under council control.
Yes, well, I wouldn't be. I'm not. My remit isn't planning, and I wouldn't be. Well, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on the planning process because I'm not really involved in it in those aspects of it.
No, I just worry you might be working in isolation. Sorry.
Chair, right. Can we, Claire, you down for a question?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Thank you for being here. Just on the big piece going through on the nutrient programme, just a quick question to see, this is operational, obviously now, and what's the feedback, any positive or negative coming from the sector?
Well, in terms of last year in the consultation, the industry did not like the level of control we were proposing, but we did have significant and meaningful engagement and adjusted some of the proposals so that it didn't impact as many farms, but still had a significant impact in terms of benefit. So I think in short, in the time available, I would say that it was recognised that we really had listened to consultation. And I would, having been involved in these reviews and negotiations with the industry here and with Brussels and everything else, I say what we've come up with is a workable and balanced approach. We recognise that changing things over time and getting more efficiency does take time and adjustment, and you can't do it overnight. And I would suggest that with a balanced approach. Now, there's more things for farmers to do, but what's in the action programme isn't. I would suggest and stand over the fact that there's nothing in that action programme that isn't outside of good, efficient farming practice. That's good things to do, nutrient management planning, splitting below emission and things like that, applying fertilisers at the right time and the right quantities, and not when there's heavy rain forecast and things like that.
Okay, more members down here. So I'm going to put the question. Okay, right. That the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2017-198, the Environmental Impact Assessment Agriculture Amendment Number 2 Regulations Northern Ireland 2017, and subject to Examiner Statutory Report, has no objection to the rule.
Agreed.
Okay. The SR 2018-188, the pesticides, genetically modified organisms and fertilizers. Oh, sorry. The SR 2017, that this 2017-222, that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2017-222, the Seed Marketing Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2017, and subject to Examiner Statutory rules, has no objection to the rule. That the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2018-188, the Pesticides, Genetically Modified Organisms and Fertilisers Miscellaneous Amendments Regulations Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to Examiner Statutory Rules Report, has no objection to the rule. Okay, that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2019-81, Nutrient Action Programme Regulations Northern Ireland 2019, and subject to Examiner Statutory Rules Report, has no objection to the rule.
Agreed.
The Committee of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2019-183, the Nutrient Action Programme Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2019, and subject to Examiner Statutory Rules Report, has no objection to the rule.
Agreed.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much.
Sure, just if we could inform the committee that we do endeavour to ensure that all the issues and requirements of the Nutrient Action Programme is communicated clearly to farmers. We produce guidance documents, we have online calculators and things, but for the new regulations we produce a summary document as well, and we focused on getting that out quickly to farmers, and that was sent to all farmers who received our FAS newsletter and things. So largely all farmers in receipt of basic payment received a copy of this in September, and that details all the various requirements and the changes highlighted and things. And we've produced this for each action programme in conjunction with the Farmers Union and other stakeholders, and it's in this format so that it can be put on the as a wall chart or whatever in a farm office or whatever. So we are conscious of the need to communicate clearly with farmers and the farmers.
Chairperson, could I ask maybe a document that's made available to the committee members?
Yes, I'd be very happy to supply a copy for everybody, because it's actually quite a good summary just of the main points.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, John. Good suggestion. Okay, folks, the next SRs that we are considering are SR 2018-033, the Pollution Prevention and Control regulations 2018, pages 415 to 430. In your pack, the SR 2018-190, the environmental noise regulations 2018, 431 to 438 in your pack. The SR 2018-206, the fluorinated greenhouse gases amended regulations 2018, 439 to 453 in your pack. The 2018-215 air quality amendment, etc. regulations Northern Ireland 2018, page 454 to 463 in your pack. And official.
Yes, the officials are Colin Nugent. Colin Nugent and
Yeah,
Amy
and we have Colin Nugent and Amy Holmes, the officials from the department, to questions. But I'll give you a few moments to consider the information before we open up for questions.
Could I just ask for the page number of the noise amendment?
The environmental noise amendment, page 431 to 438. I think we'll get them finished for one.
Okay, members, we've had time to consider this next batch of SRs and to say welcome Amy and Colin here to take some of your questions. And the first person up for a question is William.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very welcome. In relation to 2018-0133 and pollution prevention, and I see the number of combustion plants, how many are there of those? I'm not aware. And I see the cost, 13.43 million. Is that for Northern Ireland alone, or is that for the UK in total?
Those are the figures that were presented in the public consultation in 2017, and I believe those are UK-wide figures.
UK-wide. Many of those are in Northern Ireland, many plants?
Well, the same consultation estimated there might be 1,200 potential plants that aren't all operated routinely, but routinely operated plants could be between 200 or 300.
Okay.
And again, those figures are based on the UK-wide figures, factored down.
UK-wide.
Hey, William. Philip.
Thanks. In terms of all four of the SRs, I mean, they're purely, in my reading, I'm looking for this clarification, they're purely about transposing current rules and regulations in the aftermath of Brexit. Or is there any?
Not quite. There is a slight difference in them. For example, the environmental noise regulations are bringing in a new directive that is simply a new methodology for noise mapping. Whereas if you refer to the air quality amendments, those are simply changes to references to to EU legislation that's already been transposed. In order to prepare for EU exit, it's necessary to update some of the references. So the 4 sets of regulations we're talking about do slightly different things.
Okay, so 3 of the 4 are just about transposing the same regulations that we currently have, and that the noise one is slightly different.
Yes, they're transposing EU law. They're not designed to deal with the situation post-exit.
Not to deal with it?
They're not EU exit legislation, pieces of legislation. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Okay. Or did you indicate you want a question?
No,
It's okay.
Again with you.
You're happy enough? Claire.
I think there's, thank you, Chair. I think there's loads, just to, particularly with the noise pollution and the air quality as well. But I understand that these are more technical amendments to update existing EU legislative standards.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
For environmental noise, it brings in a new methodology to follow when we do our noise mapping every 5 years, and it's designed to improve consistency across all of the member states to give better quality data. The air quality amendments to which you refer, these are, I suppose, referential amendments, for example, where another piece of legislation has brought in a more up-to-date directive. These are simply changing references to more up-to-date references to ensure that whenever we do come to EU exit, that the legislation that's on the statute book is all up-to-date.
Great. And do you think that, obviously having legislation is one thing, monitoring and delivering on that legislation is obviously quite a different thing, particularly with air quality. Do you feel that we uphold these legislative standards well here?
Certainly in terms of air quality and the objectives and targets that come through from Europe, we do monitor air quality across a number of monitoring stations in Northern Ireland. And you may be aware that nitrogen dioxide is one of our PFG targets, so we do look at it very closely.
And you're content we don't breach those?
There have been occasions in the past where there have been breaches for air quality, and that's something that we work with both the district councils and DFI, who have transport responsibilities, to work through to try and improve.
Chair, I understand it's maybe going a wee bit beyond passing the SRs as the stand or the SLs today, but it's definitely something we maybe follow up in greater detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You, Claire? All right.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Amy, Colin. It's just, again, it's on the air and the noise, basically. So it's not that it's reducing what you're allowed to make, it's more or less that you can control it and measure it.
Certainly on the noise regulations, these will have no impact whatsoever on noise levels.
Right.
What this does is, when the original Environmental Noise Directive was brought in 2002, it was always the intention that there would be an EU-wide methodology for noise mapping, but until that was released, member states could use their own methodology, their own sort of computer methodology for noise mapping. The EU-wide version was issued in 2015, and what these regulations do essentially is bring that EU methodology into the Northern Ireland regulations, so that we are mapping in the same way as the European counterparts.
We could just come back.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Is that much of an effect on costs to yourself?
The cost of noise mapping?
Yeah.
Noise mapping is done every 5 years in line with the Environmental Noise Directive. A number of competent authorities for each of the environmental noise sources have been appointed. For example, it's DERA and NIEA for industrial noise, TransLink for rail, Department of Infrastructure for road, and both Belfast International Airport for its noise source, and Belfast City Airport, George Best Belfast City Airport for its noise mapping. And in the past we have let a group contract managed by DERA, and costs have come down in recent years, but it's usually in and around 150, 180,000, and that is done every 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
And that work is contracted out to an acoustic specialist company that will spend a number of months running these noise models for us.
Okay, all right. John?
Chairperson, thanks very much. I'm suitably impressed by the benefits, £58.64 million.
Apologies. What you
That's for the PPC legislation.
Obviously, I would welcome some expansion on how that figure is arrived at, because I think the more we appreciate the improvements that are being made, the better. The second part of my question really is, much of this legislation depends on the partnership or working relationship with local councils. Is that satisfactory, and is there a seamless relationship in ensuring that the legislation is in fact enforced?
Yes. Well, in relation to the first part of your question, the cost-benefit quotation carried out in the consultation, that was derived from the UK-wide consultation.
Oh, right.
Transposing
not
the
specific
directive.
to Northern Ireland.
So no, those costs would not be specific to Northern Ireland. But the nature of the law is to improve air quality by reducing emissions for those particular appliances. And so there will be a general benefit overall because of that. And you're correct, district councils are one of the competent authorities required to enforce these regulations. And engagement with all of the competent authorities has been very good to date.
Okay.
And in the build-up to the first round of regulation last year, we did have a stakeholder event with district councils and other enforcement bodies early in the year.
Thank you.
Okay, John, and Rosemary?
Yeah, thank you. It's in relation to 18206, and it's in relation to the regulatory impact. You're looking for better regulations. Have you considered perhaps the financial burden this will have on stakeholders? For example, businesses will need perhaps certificates for quality control, things like that, updating labelling, etc., on these refrigerated units, etc.
Yes, that would have been considered in the consultation process, and these, of course, are amendment regulations to existing controls that have been in place for quite some time. So this did make some fine tuning to the certification you mentioned for people to operate and work with those particular types of gases and products. There's also a labelling requirement too, so there will be small additional elements for businesses, but during the consultation, no one expressed any objection to any of those.
Right.
Okay. As there are no other speakers, I'm going to put the questions in relation to these SRs. Okay, first up here is that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2018-033, the Pollution Prevention and Control Industrial Emissions Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to Examiner Statutory Report has no objection to the rule.
Great.
The Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs considered SR 2018-190, the Environmental Noise Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to Examiner of Statutory Rules Report has no objection to the rule.
Great.
Members, the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2018-206, the Fluorinated Greenhouse Gases Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to the Examiner of Statutory Rules Report has no objection to the rule. But the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2018-215, the Air Quality Amendment, etc. Regulations Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to Examiner of Statutory Rules Report has no objection to the rule. Okay. Thank you, Colin and Amy. Thank you. Very helpful. Right, the next SRs that we will be considering are SR 19068, the Humane Trapping Regulation Standards, page 464 to 504 in your pack. SR 2019-069, the Spring Traps Approval Order, which is 505 to 527. SR 2019-159, the Invasive Alien Species Order, page 528 to 588. And page 2019, SR 2019-223, the Genetically Modified Organisms Regulations 2019. And the officials present with us today are Ken Bradley and Mark Preston, and they can answer any questions that you may have. But I'll give members a few minutes to read the information before we move on to questions.
Can I just ask again, the organisms, what pages are there on the?
Oh, sorry.
223?
589 to 646.
589 to
646.
Thank you.
Okay, members, you've had some time to consider the SRs in front of you, and are there any members who want to ask any questions of the officials, Mark and Ken, who are in front of us here now? Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just reference has been made to the power to grant licences for use of traps and snares, etc., etc. It gives new protections for stoats, but really, is there any market in Northern Ireland for trapping stoats, or is it pretty low?
No, there's very little, no evidence to show any trapping of stoats. The stoats has been named there because internationally, one of the species that the main trapping standards applies to. There's a fair bit of trapping of stoats in Scotland with gamekeepers and things like that, but very little of any in Northern Ireland.
That's good, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Claire?
Thanks, Chair. That's basically what I was sort of going to as well. And have you any idea about the stoat population in Northern Ireland?
No, we've
never identified as a problem or an issue or any?
No.
And that would explain then the low response from Northern Ireland organisations.
That's right.
The UK-wide.
That's right.
Yeah. All our stoats are dead on.
They're safe.
Anti-social behaviour going on there.
That's right. And some of the organisations, such as the British Association of Shooting and Conservation,
yeah,
they would cover UK-wide as well. There would be a number of organisations like that, and gamekeepers associations as well would be across.
You don't expect this to have a big impact here at all?
No, again, Scotland was a bigger impact. It was much grouse shooting and things like that there.
Okay. Thanks.
Claire, John?
Chairperson, my question may be devious and misguided, but is the member shocked and surprised that I feel uncomfortable discussing snares and traps in this day and age when there's such an appreciation of the value of wildlife and animals, and the right certainly not to be killed off in these grotesque and horrible ways?
Well, these traps are obviously not for general wildlife. They're specific species which are considered, a threat to nature conservation or crops or whatever.
Yes.
And for instance, badger has been mentioned there, but badger is a protected species, and we would not allow badgers to be captured only for scientific purpose, definitely not to be killed. The pine marten again is a protected species, so again we wouldn't issue a licence for the capture of pine marten. And again, there's no need for capture of pine marten.
What's wrong with poor stoat then?
The stoat, well, it's not protected. So again, the stoat is a predator species, against grouse, curlew, and things like that there.
All right. Yeah.
So that's why it's a problem. So it is. And you're right.
Okay, members. Okay, I'll move on then to put the question. Okay. That the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2019-068, the Humane Trapping Standards Regulation, Northern Ireland 2019, and subject to Examiner Secretary's report, has no objection to the rule.
Agreed.
The Committee of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2019-069, the Spring Traps Approval Order, Northern Ireland 2019, and subject to Examiner Secretary's report, has no objection to the rule.
Agreed.
The Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs considered SR 2019-159, the Invasive Alien Species Enforcement and Permitting Order, Northern Ireland 2019, and subject to Examiner Secretary rules, has no objection to the rule.
Agreed.
The Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2019-223, the Genetically Modified Organisms Deliberate Release Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2019, and subject to Examiner Statutory rules, report has no objection to the rule.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Ken and Mark.
Chair.
Next are all the individual ones. Don't give no more groups at all, individual.
Yep. Okay, folks, we're moving on now to okay, thank you very much. We're moving on now to look at some SRs. They're individual SRs as opposed to being in groups. And the one we're looking at now is a Waste Management Licensing Amendment Regulations 2017 on page 647 to 656 in your packs. The official president of the public gallery, this is Anthony Courtney. You're very welcome, Anthony.
Thank you.
And Anthony will answer any questions that you may have, and I will give you a number of minutes to scrutinise over the SR and ask Anthony any questions that you may have. Okay, members have any questions in relation to SR 27-202?
No.
No.
Have enough? Yep. Okay, I'll put the question. The Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2017-202, the Waste Management Licensing Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2017, and subject to Examiner Statute rules. There's no objection to this rule.
Agreed.
That was quick, Anthony.
Yeah.
That's not enough. At least you got to listen before.
Okay, we're moving on now to SR 207-230, the Producer Responsibility Regulations 2017. It's page 657 to 662 in your pack. We have Wendy Lindsay present, who can deal with any questions that you may have. I'll give you a few minutes to read this over this SR.
30 starts and 30. Sorry.
Okay. So, any questions, folks? Okay. So, members are content. I'll put the question that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs considered SR 2017-3 with the Producer Responsibility Obligations, Packaging, Waste, Amendment Number 2 Regulations, Northern 9 2017, and subject to Examiner Statute Rules Report has no objection to the rule. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, we're moving on now to SR 2018-171, the Ship Recycling Facilities Regulations. It's at page 663 to 668 in your pack. We have Emma Finlay from the department here, the Public Gallery. Emma, you're very welcome. We will ask any of your questions. I'll give you a few minutes to consider this SR before members want to maybe indicate to Stella or myself and want to ask a question.
Nobody down, no.
Okay.
Sorry, could I just out of interest ask, when was the ship last recycled in Northern Ireland?
That is actually a very good question, because a ship under the definition within the legislation, I have that here, but in real terms it applies to the recycling of oil rigs by Holland and Wolff.
Oh, yes.
That's actually what this is about.
That's useful, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Emma. Very helpful, Harry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Emma. I was just going to ask you, like, how many you were doing a year, sorry?
Well, although we didn't conduct formal consultation on the local amendment to the regime here, I did speak informally with the Chief Executive of Holland and Wolff, and they said that he said that he'd have to check his records, but it would certainly be less than 10% a year, possibly less than 5, possibly less than 3 in any given year, but it was an option that they wanted to keep open for future economic development. And they had also been looking at the recycling of offshore wind turbines as well. So in terms of the broader sustainability goals of the department, and the economic goals, the broader economic goals of the PFG, we were very keen to preserve Holland and Wolff's freedom to keep that open in the changing regime going forward in Brexit.
Thank you. Better to keep it in place.
Yes, John.
But I think, Chairperson, in light of recent history and Harland and Wolff being saved, I would wish them every success in the future, and may the recycling quadruple.
Thank you for that insight, John, and thank you very much, Emma, for your patience and your indulgence. I put the question to the committee that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 28-171, the Ship Recycling Facilities Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to the Examiner Statute Rules Report has no objection to the rule.
Great.
Okay. So moving on now to the environment. Thank you, Emma. The Environment Miscellaneous Regulations on page 669 to 693. We have Richard Coey as the official present, who will be able to answer any questions that you may have. So if you just, it's page 669 to 693, Environment Regulations. And sure, take a read over for a few minutes, and then we'll Okay, there's a couple of members who have indicated they want to ask a question. First up, Philip.
It's an important issue, and in terms of this SR, it covers legislation for protection of wastewater, air, aquatic, animal health, fisheries, marine, sea fishes, etc. So my question is essentially looking confirmation that the current legislative framework will be maintained in the aftermath of Brexit, and I'm making the assumption then that it's the same rules governing all of those issues on the island of Ireland.
Well, yes, what this does is effectively updates the domestic legislation statute book to ensure that it reflects the current European requirements as under the 2018 withdrawal bill. EU law, as it applied at the point of exit, will continue to apply. So this piece of legislation ensured that the legislation that the environmental statute book in Northern Ireland was up to date in terms of European compliance at the point of exit. So Ireland being a member state, that would ensure parity with the Irish statute book.
Okay, you okay with that, Philip?
Yeah.
Morris?
No, that's it. Answered.
Answered.
Thank you.
Okay. Can go put the question? That the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs considered SR 2018-200, the Environment Miscellaneous Amendments Regulation Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to Examiner Statutory Rules Report has no objection to rule.
Great.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, the next on our report is the radioactive substances SR 2018-116, page 694 to 724 in your packs. The official present is Alison James and Gillian Wasson, and you're very welcome to the committee. And they will answer members' questions and give you a few minutes to read over that SR before we move to any questions that you might have. Okay. Okay then, Harry.
Okay, thank you. You're very welcome. I'm glad you to bring in that asty something. Maybe you could just tell me, are there many radioactive substances in Northern Ireland per se?
Not huge amounts, it's mainly used in hospitals, a little bit of research and some small industrial usage, but we don't have any nuclear industry, so...
That's what I thought. That's all. That's okay. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Is there any discussions ongoing about Northern Ireland being used to take radioactive waste from other places? No?
No.
That's not on anybody's agenda at all that you're aware of?
No.
Thanks.
Philip?
Part of my question was already answered. I just noticed in the consultation that there was no responses from anybody in the north. Is there any issues or anything that we could or should be concerned about in relation to this SR and its impact here?
The changes made by this SR had very little impact on Northern Ireland, which is why there would have been responses.
Okay, members, I'm going to put the question. Right. The Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs considered SR 2018, the Radioactive Substances Modification of Enactments Regulation Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to Examiner Statutory Rules Report has no objection to the rule.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Alison and Gillian. Okay, we're moving on now to the 2018-104, the Quality of Bathing Water Regulations. We have the official present here is Paul Black, and sorry, it's page 75 to 736 in your pack, and Paul Black is the official president. Give the members a few minutes to read this SR, and then Paul can handle any questions that you might have.
No indications.
I don't know where they should ask us. That question's very stupid. I don't know. I'm going to embarrass myself.
Go on.
Go for it, Phil.
So, in terms of the quality of bathing, I mean, are we talking about in baths and home? Or are we talking about swimming pool? I mean, what exactly are we talking about?
Bathing water is a natural area of water, so typically coastal, bay, sea, could be a lake, but it's good swimming pool and artificial bodies.
Brilliant. My question.
You're not coming into your bathroom.
Every day is a school day.
John?
Given recent announcements by Northern Ireland Water of their severe shortage to implement capital projects, can Paul predict perhaps that there might be an increasing interest in this? If there is, it would be unfortunate because the significant improvements in bathing water, and I'm sure Morris would agree with me, around the coast have been certainly welcomed. And is the shortage of finance currently in Northern Ireland Water a factor which might well make this legislation more active than I would want to see it?
Well, it's possible that changes that Northern Ireland Water make to their infrastructure could affect the bathing waters. Currently, our bathing waters are quite healthy. None of them are failing. Yeah. They're monitored on a regular basis, and Northern Ireland Water are very aware of maintaining the quality of bathing waters, so we don't anticipate that to be a significant problem.
Chairperson, I would welcome that and maybe take this opportunity to pay tribute to Northern Ireland Water for the significant improvements that have been made. And I say that looking back on the distant past when our beaches were in awful state. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Just maybe want to ask, does this regulation extend just to the quality of the water, or do it go into sea pollution? I'm thinking of plastics and
no, it's just the quality
water
of water
quality.
in terms of what they call fecal coliform bacteria, which is agents which would cause sickness and disease in bathers.
Yeah.
So no, it wouldn't include sea pollution or plastics.
Thanks.
Okay, folks, we'll put the question that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Affairs has considered SR 2018-104, the Quality of Bathing Water Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2018, and subject to examiner statutory rules report, there's no objection to the rule. Great. Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, we're looking now at the SR 2019-018, the Environmental Protection Microbeads Regulations 2019, page 737 to 751 in your pack. We have Susan Kramer present here from official, and she will answer any questions that you might have. We want to just take a few minutes to look through this SR on page 737 to 751. Okay, members have had time to consider this. If there are no questions, I will put the question. The Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs considered SR 2019-018, the Environmental Protection Microbeads Regulations Northern Ireland 2019. The subject to examiner statutory rules report has no objection to the rule.
Agreed.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, moving now to the Water Environment Floods Directive 2018. This is page 752 in your packs. The official present here this morning is Michael Oliver. And He can answer any questions that you might have.
Things left out.
Okay, members, we have a couple of members who want to ask a question. First up, Morris.
Thank you, Chair. It's not really a question, it's a request. Have you any information on projected floodplains coming into the future in Northern Ireland? And if you have, could you forward them to the committee for information?
And we need to come back to you on that.
If possible, please. Thank you.
You, Morris. Harry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Michael, I was just wondering, will this help more like rivers that overflow, or would it also be help to towns, you know, that block drains and things sometimes can cause flooding?
Well, it's really about transferring the responsibility that was held before in what used to be DARD, and then whenever there was the restructuring of departments, there was an omission which meant the responsibility for those areas did not move from DARD to infrastructure and then moved to DERA by default. So the expertise, the resources were really needed to be moved to infrastructure, and that's what this corrects.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, Chairperson, so really this is only about transferring responsibility from one department to another. So any questions on it would probably be superfluous.
This was something that was had already been agreed by the executive in the discussions in advance of the restructuring of the department.
Okay. John Clare?
Do you see any issues with, will there be any remit left? I'm thinking, will there be a split between cross-departmental responsibilities in terms of dealing with flood risks, or is it all going to be dealt with one department?
It really talks about the competent authority.
Yeah.
So that's the key issue there. The competent authority will, of course, go across departments on a number of issues, but this deals with the movement of the competent authority between one department and another. Doesn't prevent them from engaging with other departments, and that's part of their responsibility.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Should also note that Michael is our DALO, our Departmental Assembly Liaison Officer, so we'll be seeing a lot of you and you of us in the time ahead. So thank you for that, Michael. I'll put the question that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2018-137, the Water Environment Floods Directive Amendment Regulations No. 2018, and subject to examiner statutory rules, there is no objection to a rule.
Agreed.
Okay, any other business? Do members have any other business items of business that they wish to raise? No. Okay, I want to inform members that the next meeting is Tuesday, 28th of January 2020 at 10 a.m. in room 30. Well, thank you all very much, and I want to adjourn the meeting.
The Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.